It's you matter. You guys are funny. Okay. Yeah.
That stage of life, evolution, iron, bronze, silver, gold, does it matter with the age or just with the development of maturity, emotional maturity, thinking process? I just want to know, just say iron stage is the phase where you have pleasure, seek pleasure, and you have desire. But I would say like if you are still 60 plus and you still have some desires like they will be good, class will be good, like you still have desires. So technically you are still under the iron phase if you have desires.
So for those of you who may not know what our friend is talking about, there are 5 or 6 different stages that we could occupy. The first one initially is what we call the iron. It's the genitalia area, symbolically. And it's about mostly physical pleasures, pleasures that you pursue but don't require too much patience. And they are the Freudian id, if you will. You want them to be satisfied immediately. Like you want a cup of coffee and you want it now. Or you go out on a date and she says to you, can we first have dinner? You say no. Let's have sex and then dinner. Which is the childish things that we do. Where you become like a kid. Where you ask your father for a bike. Your father says, okay, tomorrow. You say, no, I want it right now. So, and the truth is it's organic. You see that your buddies have a bike, you don't have a bike, and you want a bike, and it's fine. You see that your friends have a companion, you want one of those, and so you throw a temper tantrum. The next is the abdomen area, what we call bronze. It's symbolic of a different kind of pleasure, but the only way that you can bring these pleasures to life is through power, such as money, such as having graduated from school, for example. There is nothing wrong with, and what happens is for you to be able to use the money well. In other words, when you go to school, I have a friend who graduated from Berkeley, computer science, and then went to the Silicon Valley for a number of years and worked for Google. He's a 20-year-old punk. But because of his grades, Google hired him and paid him about $300,000 a year. A 20-year-old. But because from the age 6 all the way to about 20, he would constantly smoke weed, he would constantly drink, and would constantly do porn. And because he hadn't graduated from those pleasures, and the only way you can graduate is by a shock being applied to your system, where you stand back and you reflect and you say, do I really want to drink more or smoke more or do porn more? And then you go through this self-cleansing process. For him, that never happened. So he really never graduated from genitalia. But what happened is that because his father is a professor at George Washington University, because his mom is another professor, there was a desire inside him to always finish school, so he did. So when he started getting paid all this money, he took all that money and spent it on porn, on weeds, and on alcohol. So even though he's up here, he takes the power given to him by the abdomen, takes it down to the genitalia, and satisfies those desires. Does he have maturity? Yeah, he can be responsible to keep a job, to do what his boss tells him, but he doesn't have the intelligence of the majority of how to look at his time, the money that he makes, what he should spend it on. So for him, even though he has a master's degree, he still lives in the pleasure area, genitalia. Next is the chest area, where, remember, the iron stage has to do with your pleasures and your desires. The abdomen, the bronze area, has to do also with your pleasures and your desires. Relationships, on the other hand, the chest area is very, very, very different in the sense that you can't live for yourself anymore, or at least not as much. The money that you make goes into taking care of your relationship, your mortgage, shopping, your kids. And the other thing about relationship is that all relationships create a good amount of struggle and conflict. In relationship, we make promises. And for the most part, you have to be good to your promises. So even though there may be times where you want to walk away from the relationship because of the promise you made, because of the in-laws, the outlaws, your own self-image, self-respect, where you are in life, you try to overcome these ridiculous temptations that come upon you once in a while to leave the relationship or to get into like these humongous fights with your companion. And for the first time, when you get to the silver, the chest area, you realize that your life is more really about other people, not just about you. Now, that only happens when you get into the silver area and you say, you know what, I think I want to add your name to the bank account. And you're no longer the Scrooge that you used to be. And you're okay with having sex with your companion once every 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. Okay. And now, because you have a relationship now, because you may in that relationship have children, you're forced to get rid of your addiction to smoking, to porning, to hang out with losers that you call friends. If before you used to take this money and spend it on booze, now you spend it on buying perhaps better items for your family. Okay. If you haven't understood the function of money in a family life, relationship life, the truth is your relationship is not going to survive. Okay. If you haven't properly graduated from the weed and alcohol and porn area, there's a good chance that you're going to destroy your relationship as well. Because you're going to bring in friends who are going to contaminate your relationship life. Okay. And your relationship is not just limited to you having a girlfriend or a boyfriend. It has to do with your parents. For the first time, you realize that your parents made a lot of sacrifices raising you, and now you want to pay back what they did for you. Okay, so it takes a good amount of maturity, reflection, awareness, mindfulness, and all that. Now, while in the iron and bronze and silver, you have this intellectual part of you that always comes down and says, okay, use your brain. Where do you go to find the best weed? Where do you go to find the quickest pleasure? What classes you need to take to graduate, to go to a 4-year school? How do you need to function in an interview? How do you keep your job? How do you fix the conflict between you and your companion? What schools would best serve your children? This is all the function of your mind, coming down and trying to figure out the complexities of these 3 layers. Okay. There is a different part of your intellect that says, you know what, apart from the genitalia, the pleasure, apart from the pleasure given to me by graduating from school and making money, apart from the pleasure that's given to me by my relationship with people, there's a different kind of pleasure you've stepped into, which is one of identity. Who am I? What am I? What am I doing with my life? And you're not going to find shelter by smoking by spending money on things, by hanging out with your wife, for the first time you realize that this particular question, which is what we call the gold stage, it's really about your relationship to you and your life. And your family is excluded from that. It's your quest. And that quest brings about its own unique set of emotions. Your wife can't reach you, your kids can't reach you, weed can't reach you, alcohol can't reach you, and your degrees are kind of useless. We don't mean much. So you become profoundly self-involved. You know, for the first time you ask, what is pleasure? Is because you can get a good amount of pleasure by smoking and drinking and porning. You can also get a good amount of pleasure by looking for a house or looking for a degree or how to best spend money that is relatively healthy, I suppose, or how to better your relationship. All these questions have to do with the things outside of you. The questions that arise out of the gold stage has to do with you and your relationship to you and life. Okay? You may come to realize that you wasted a lot of money doing weeds. You wasted a lot of money taking the wrong classes, studying the wrong subject in life, for example, or maybe even getting married to the wrong person, or maybe having kids. Because now you want to spend time with yourself, by yourself, on your own, doing things that please you, only to realize your companion is an obstacle, your kids are an obstacle, your job is an obstacle. And then if you're able to graduate from the iron, from the gold, if you're able to survive the shipwreck, because that's what happens to your life when you get to the gold, you get to a place we call transcendence, where you no longer really care about the questions and the pleasures that come from your pursuits in the gold stage. The who am I, the what am I, reading Dostoevsky, reading the Bible, those things no longer are relevant and important to you. You can just float in life. If you're able to graduate from the sort of a hippie lifestyle, you move into what we call unity. I think it's the sixth and final stage, where what you do is you're able to live in the iron and take what benefits you in the iron. You're able to live in the silver and take what benefits you. And by benefits you, I mean anything that serves the gold. Okay. So if you were to hang out with Mahatma Gandhi or Malcolm X, they will call you friend only if you're able to protect and nourish their agenda. If you can't talk about justice, think about justice, human rights, you're no use to Mahatma Gandhi. Okay? So all of a sudden, friendship has a specific agenda and definition. Money becomes very, very important, only to be spent on homeless people. Okay? Does that answer your... Because I'm bored now. Okay. Anyone else? Maybe?
Is it possible to outside of a teacher's possible to help someone mature from
So let me understand the question. I am your student. You are my teacher. Carmen is also, to some extent, in our circle. You're not available, but I want to help Carmen to get from point A to point B. Or you are. Which one? Is it me or is it you? Like me trying to hang out with her? No. The reason is Carmen doesn't look at me the way she looks at you. Carmen doesn't define me the way she defines you. I'm unable to inspire the necessary emotions, both physical and emotional, the way that you do. I can't inspire the sort of respect and fear in Carmen the way you do. And so, in as much as I become an extension of you, okay, she will only hang out with me to get an image, to have your image close at hand, okay? But she doesn't need me, and she doesn't respect me, and she doesn't fear me, and she doesn't really value my friendship unless somehow it gets her close to you. There's a story about Layli and Majnun. For those of you who may not be familiar with the names, Layli and Majnun are the Romeo and Juliet of the Western world. So Juliet has been taken. She's going to be married to someone else. Romeo is stranded in the middle of the desert. He longs to be with his companion, but she's nowhere to be found. In addition, she's about to be married. He's like limping around in the desert, and he runs into a deer, this animal. And he looks at the deer and says, I have a message for you to give to my Juliet, to my Layli. And so what that story symbolizes is that since he can't reach Juliet, the deer, this animal, becomes an extension, a rope, a connection, a mediator between him and his companion. Okay? So I stand as a conduit between her and you. The moment you die, or you have no interest in her, she can no longer be interested in me. You know? It's kind of when Muhammad is alive, all you have is Islam. Just one particular interpretation, definition, outlook on Islam. The moment Muhammad dies, it fractures into two. And people can't even become united that they both worship Muhammad, he's a good guy, let's continue with this. No. Okay. At the moment Jesus died, okay, what you have is all these different disciples having their own different agendas, and all these different gospels coming forth, all saying different things about the same man. Okay. So you have the Gospel of Judas saying things that you can't find in the Gospel of Matthew. You have the Gospel of Luke saying things that you don't have in the Gospel of John. And you have the Gospel of John saying things that you can't even find in the three synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So once the founder goes away, something happens to the student. The hub is the teacher. Once the hub goes away, all the spokes, they're just going to fall apart. That's just the way things work. So what the student can do is inspire, but it's very, 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 very short-lived. Okay. Look, doctors are interesting, especially in the intensive care unit. Someone goes to you and says, you're going for a physical checkup, and the diagnosis is you have cancer 4, and it's spread everywhere. They look at you and they say, I'm sorry, you have 3 to 6 months. Well, is there anything I can do? No. No remedy? No. Has the doctor given up? Yeah. Because they know their limit. They know that the medical field hasn't advanced to cure cancer, stage 4. Then I go in. I'm diagnosed with cancer stage 1, maybe 2. Is there hope for me? Yes. Is the doctor willing to spend time with me? Yes. And so what you need to understand as human beings is this. There are certain people you can reach. There are certain people you can reach, but they're not ready yet. And there are certain people you can reach and they are ready. Okay. And despite your intentions, and your intentions could be the best intentions, okay, and Carmen may come to you asking for help. Okay. Now that may be an inspired moment, but as you begin to understand Carmen a little bit, you realize that she has all these prior narratives. Maybe she smokes too much. Maybe she drinks too much. Maybe she's got a lousy boyfriend. Maybe she has a lousy history. And that's a little too many things to overcome and to fix. Okay. Now, if you happen to be a young teacher, like all young people, you walk into life with a lot of hopes and dreams and fantasies, unexamined, untested. If you happen to be a seasoned teacher, it's like the people you date when you're 20 is very different than the people you date when you're like 45. But when you're 20, you're just a stupid little kid running around. It's just like a toy you want to play with. When you're 40, the story is very, very different. You've been burnt a couple of times, you've wasted time, you wasted life, and you say, you know what, I just don't want to waste my time with losers anymore. I want someone who has some maturity to them. I want someone who doesn't drink, who doesn't smoke. If you're in that particular stage, is good to his parents, is done with school, hasn't gone through like 50,000 relationships. So the problem with all of this is shortcuts are always difficult, always difficult. Now, if I was to give you a very, very silly example, I would say the following. Carmen is 20. I am 62. I am a shortcut. Carmen is a woman, so her story is different. Let's say Eli. Okay? He is 20. I am 62. Okay? That's like 22 years his senior. 42 years his senior. That's a lot of years ahead of him. What does he want? School. Degrees. Well, I have them. What else does he want? Money. I have them. What does he want? Marriage. I have them. Friendships. I have them. I have all the things he's going to be looking for the next 20, 30, 40 years. I can tell him how he's going to waste his time. I can even tell him how he's going to waste his life. That's a shortcut. But for him to be on that shortcut means he has to make a lot of sacrifices. He has to give up a lot of things that on the outside, seemingly they're going to be the bringers of pleasure and happiness and success. And somehow my job is to convince him that though they are mirages, that the waves, the foam is on the top, that they're going to be, the embodiments to some extent of happiness and pleasure and success and this and that, they will fizzle out. And once they fizzle out, he will once again come to realize he is where he was when he was 2, empty, bored, frustrated. Some of us in this room are no longer in our 20s. Okay? If you were to go back in time, and if you were to kind of put yourself back to when you were 18, no doubt, if you have any brains about you, if you're aware of certain social and physical components, you would say, you know what, I would have never dropped out of school. I would have finished Laney, 20. In fact, I would have signed up for classes, Laney college classes at the age of 13, because that's permissible. By the time I'm 18, I have 60 college units. I'll transfer right out of high school to a 4-year school. Be done with my bachelor's at the age of 18. Be done with my master's at the age of 21, 22. Now that's a shortcut, but that's giving up a lot of things. Like not hanging out with your friends, not drinking, not smoking, all those things that most people usually engage in. And though it sounds good, it's very difficult to apply. It's like anything else in life. Karl Marx ideas, really wonderful, difficult to apply. Jesus' ideas, wonderful, just difficult to apply. The Ten Commandments, wonderful, difficult to apply. Ideas are good as long as they don't come down here. The moment they come down here, they just, they don't do much. They can't do much. Because you live in a system that is, it's really too much about tables and chairs of life. I mean, you have to be on the phone for 5 hours for healthcare. You have to get a job at Home Depot to pay rent. You have to take useless classes to just graduate. And by the time you want to attend to the bigger questions of life, you're just exhausted. And add to it the biological fact that you don't really want to be alone. You want to get married. Marriage takes a lot of time. Then you want to have kids. They take a lot of time. And before you know it, you're like 90. So this idea of creating a utopic environment, it's new, it's impossible. It doesn't exist. You could watch Rambo 4, the one that takes place in Burma, and that in itself is a very, very interesting story. Because you have a guy who's a soldier. You have a guy who believes in the system. You have the guy who believes in military. He believes in justice. He believes in fairness. He believes in democracy. He believes in his captains and lieutenants and this and that. He believes in the whole thing. And, kind of like the movie that, what's his name? Tom Cruise played in 4th of July, I think. He comes back to society and nobody cares. I go over there, I risk my life, and the only thing people care about is like a gallon of milk. So really, I go all the way there, I do all this stuff, and I come back, nobody cares. I mean, look at what they're doing to veterans and the offices. And as a veteran who've served like 2, 3, 4, 5 duties overseas, you have to be on the phone like 50 hours a day for someone to take care of, your mental problems, your physical problems. No one gives a shit. And then at a certain point you say, I do all this for what? For who? And so what you have in the case of John Rambo is he comes to realize that, the system doesn't work. And what the system is really good at is sending poor kids into the military, overseas, fighting battles, making oil companies rich. And then he walks away from society completely. And he goes somewhere, he catches like cobras as a way to make a living. He lives in a boat. He's very isolated, he's very alone. And that's the other thing you need to understand. Trauma, whether it comes through your father belting you when you're young, whether it comes through your parents divorcing when you're young, whether it comes from a broken heart, or whether it comes with your own awareness. All of a sudden you become aware of so many things. I mean, these are traumatic experiences where you say, you know what, I don't want to live in society. I remember when Karl Marx, there's a scene in his life where his mom dies, Karl Marx's mom, and he's about to inherit some money. And he says, I'm really glad that she's dead, because she's not needed in life. I am. But for me to continue doing my work, I need money. And you can only speak about the death of your mother if you understand death well, if you understand your relationship with your mother well, if you understand how mothers eventually outlive their usefulness. There comes a point where kids are independent. They don't really need you. But once in a while they'll call you and say, hey mom, by the way, thank you. It's kind of like the movie Lucy, where this drug has leaked into every part of her organ. She sees things now in the form of Pythagorean mathematical equations. Things have order and beauty inside them. And she basically calls her mom and says, Mom, by the way, thank you for everything that you've done. Especially when I was like a year and a half, you did ABCD. And her mom says, you couldn't possibly know this, but I know. I'm now able to go back in time and realize all sorts of things. So when you become aware that's a profoundly traumatic experience. And what trauma does is it no longer allows you to live in the dreams that you have created for yourself. You know, trauma is like coming home, catching your spouse with another human being. And even though you guys can make it up, try to fix a relationship, you realize that there is this narrative that's always playing in the background. I love my husband, I love my wife, or being diagnosed with cancer. I love to laugh, I love to have a good time with life, but I also know I'm on borrowed time. At any time, this tumor can explode and I can die. So there is like laughter. Next to it, there's also you sitting and weeping. Yeah, both at the same time. And so what you have in John Rambo is that you see a lot of injustice in society, but you've been there. You've done that. You know, you realize how difficult it is to remove the poverty that lives in your mind. You know, that if you've had a traumatic past, I can give you sandwiches. I can even give you a home. I can give you money. But that poverty that you experienced for the past 20 years, no one can get rid of that. That's your own work. Okay? But because one of the 7 deadly sins is called sloth, overcoming sloth is profoundly difficult because sloth means overcoming comfort, overcoming habits. Change is tough. And one of the nice things about what John Rambo does is that single-handedly he's able to bring the rebels together. You know, he embodies like this life force, this change. And everybody is able to connect to him. And everybody is inspired through his bravery. Okay. But he comes out and becomes a soldier once again for about 10 minutes, only for one reason. There is a young woman who's very attractive who pleads with him. And he falls victim to her beauty. And he falls victim to her voice. And he falls victim to her beggings. He says, okay. He doesn't care about any of the other people she's around, only her. Anyways. Yeah.
Well, kind of on that note, well, I don't know, I think it's a tough question, like, in terms of Freud and Marx and, like, Freud's kind of idea that, well, that he disagreed with Marx and kind of blamed him for seeing humans as a passive kind of object that's a victim of the system, and instead that humans are kind of inherently have suffering and pain. And I feel like, I don't know what my question is exactly, but I feel like it's kind of a chicken or the egg kind of situation, because it's like humans have suffering and pain, and so they create society, which then can bring different types of kind of pain and suffering in other ways. So I just kind of like, what do you think on, like, which one is more prevalent? Do you think it's more of human nature that causes pain and suffering, or is it more society?
Okay. So let's talk about social contract for a moment. It's an idea given to us by both John Locke and then Jean-Jacques Rousseau and a few other folks. So let's say Carmen is my wife, okay? And we're just walking in the forest or the desert or somewhere, and I see that you keep eyeing Carmen. Okay. And let's say we live in a certain environment where polygamy is a no-go, that she is mine, I am her owner, and feminism is not yet born, okay? So what happens is, when I see her slowly getting more and more close to my woman, because I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I just come and slit your throat. And it's an acceptable thing, okay? And I slit your throat for very, very practical reasons. Jealousy, possessiveness, investment. She's like a horse or a cat or a donkey or a house that I have. And you want to take those things away. And the time in which I'm living, it permits me to take out my aggression in a very violent way. I end your life. Okay. So that's human nature. It's always been there. Okay. And maybe it's something that biological evolution has injected inside us because life is mean, because life is vicious, because life is uncertain and unpredictable. You always have to be on your guard. Life is not kind, life is not compassionate, and neither are the people. Goods are rare and scarce. I need to protect the loaf that I have because I know you two are hungry. Okay? And just in case I find another loaf, I become greedy. And just because your loaf is bigger than mine, I will envy yours. These are like fundamental, raw, organic emotions that live inside all of us. All of us. You don't need to overcome them. It's stupid to overcome them. They protect you. I mean, modernity, especially the American culture these days, their story is that overcome all these negative emotions that life and biology has helped create for the past few million years. Envy is good. Jealousy is good. You know, this is not like the promised land where goods are shared. I mean, if I have 10 loaves of bread and my stomach is full, then yeah, because I realize they're going to go bad, I'm going to bring it to class and give them to you guys. But if my belly is empty and there are no Safeways and Costco's, you know, to covet is good. Now, what happens is you and I create permanent settlement. Well, you can't live 50 people on a piece of property, all with these raw emotions. So what we do is this. We try to make this social environment as closely to Marx's idea of communism. Community, communion, communication, commune. Which means this. In the forest, you run around freely and you can do whatever freely. But now that you live in a pack, give me some of that freedom. Okay? Now remember, human nature doesn't go away. But what we do in this particular community is the following. If there are moments where you're angry, I will help you write poetry about that. I will create a boxing ring where you can go and punch the anger out. If you envy me because of my wife and you want her, I will create an institution called prostitution where that particular pressure, tension that lives inside you can be released through sex. So what you have really then is the following. What you have is, you have Plato, who argues that inside all of us lives this desire for perfection. You have Freud, who says despite the perfection, just human nature itself contains flaws. And these flaws are far more powerful than our desire for perfection, because they're easily accessible. And you can illustrate, demonstrate, express them easily. Right? Because all of us in this class need help to survive. I mean, you need Safeway, man. And if you happen to be 90, you need the clerk to come to your car and just put the bags in your car. When you go to Costco or Home Depot and you're looking for an item, you need the help of an expertise. If someone's mean to you in the store, well, you need the help of the security officer. If you want to pick up a garbage can that's too heavy, well, you ask your friend. We need other people, which we call friendship. Now, friendship basically means using another human being with their permission. That's really what friendship is, exploiting another human being in a respectful way, dignified way, mature way. So what we have are three parts inside us. Our desire for perfection, the raw emotions that live inside us, and us giving some of our freedoms away to tame the raw emotions, living in a society that ultimately acts as a tyrant. You want to leave this class because this class bores you, but there is a tyrant. Without a grade, you won't graduate. Whoever said that grading is important? Well, a system called the invisible hand, a system you have never seen. And even if you want to correct the system, you got to understand the educational sewer is so heavily clogged that no one can snake the garbage out. It's impossible. Now, the educational system is directly linked to capitalism. The only way that capitalism can survive is not graduating people who are able to think, but only produce people who are able and willing to do. Okay? So what happens if the social sciences say, well, let's talk and think about race. Let's talk and think about gender orientation. Let's talk and think about capitalism. Well, if you're able to invest less money in those fields and more money in the tech field, then you'll have a lot of human beings who will act like robots in cubicles and less people challenging the system. And you realize, well, you're not really talking about Amir Sabzavari. You're not even talking about Laney. You're not even talking about Peralta. You're not even talking about the state of California. All the stuff takes place in Washington. And Washington is run by Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, just a couple of people. That's it. And they're far too big for you. You're nothing. You're nobody. So I guess the best way to approach ideas is categorize a group of people. Freud, Thomas Hobbes, one category. They're both about how violent people are. And then the idea of perfection, maybe you can categorize Plato and Jesus Christ somewhere together. And then someone like David Hume and Karl Marx in a different category. And what you have is the tripartite self, that inside you are three different worlds. Just inside you. Forget the rest of it, inside you. Three very, very conflicting worlds. There's a world inside you, Justin, that you want to write the best essays. But you realize society has robbed you of time, of energy. The tyranny of living in the social world. And this other part comes in and says, cheat, Chat GPT. And even though if you want to sit somewhere, rack your brain to figure out how to respond to a question, you realize sloth overcomes you. And even though there's a part that says, Justin, think, write a beautiful essay, this part of you says, I don't give a shit about Amir and I don't give a shit about this class. And all of a sudden these raw emotions come up. It's always been this way. Come. Matt?
Not a question, but
Sure.
do you talk about perfection, ways we kind of express it?
So there are aggression comes from, I think, a variety of different directions. You have every right to be angry. I mean, despite all the YouTube clips that everybody watches, overcome anger, and anger lives in your mind, and live in the moment, live in the present. That just makes me angry. Don't watch those things. Right? You have every right to be angry. I mean, being born is to be angry. Why? Because all of a sudden we are pushed onto a stage we have never been. And we live in a social environment where all these desires are blitzed at us. And many we take in. They're not ours. And we want to satisfy them. We just don't know how. None of us come to this class with a manual. I mean, in life with a manual. Life is uncertain. It's a puzzle. We are a speck of dust in the middle of nowhere. And all of us have to figure things out. Okay. So that's one aspect of it, where you are born into life, no one asks your permission, and it's completely confusing and frustrating and bewildering. And there is no easy way to understand any fucking thing under the sun. That's number one. Okay. Number two. If you need to go to the social world, the amount of pressure that you have to suffer just by living in society, it's ungodly. Your desire for food and shelter and clothing, it has occupied us and will occupy you from the moment you're born. And it comes, I don't know if you've ever seen a tiny little kid coming out of a woman. The first thing that happens, cries. Wants to be held. Wants to be cleaned. A tiny blanket around him or her. You know. Your skin needs human touch. You're condemned. Your organism has desires. It has nothing to do with what you think intellectually about yourself. You're condemned to have a physical body, and that body demands things, and you got to satisfy it. And if you live in Iran, you have to stand 5 hours for a gallon of milk. 2 days for a pound of meat. You graduate from school, and that's no easy feat. You know, I mean, just getting a bachelor's, it means that you've been in school for about 20 years. That's a lot of pressure in an environment that just kills your soul and kills your mind, where you know you're doing work for things you don't really much care for, but there is this fear inside you. Your sister has a 4.0, you have a 2.0. She's your blood, but you hate your sister. A job you don't like, a life you don't like, and certainly a death you will not like. From the time you are born to the time you die, it's a never-ending struggle of fulfilling one pleasure or another. Okay? Now that's if you just have a relatively healthy life. Then you have someone like Mike Tyson. First, you're black in a racist country. Second, your parents are not there. Third, your body says, hold me. There is no one to hold you. And anger naturally, organically grows inside you. And then you turn out to be like Malcolm X in the sense that, well, if the teacher I love and trust tells me I can't do law because of my skin color, if I can't even trust the closest person to me, which happens to be my teacher, well, maybe I should go do what black people do. Maybe I should just steal. So being angry is part of human identity. The only people who will ever tell you not to be angry are people who live in ivory towers. Sadhguru, the Buddha. Only Jesus will tell you, turn the other cheek. They will pacify you. Now, if someone says to you, turn the other cheek because Mike Tyson is 5 times your size, and just in case he slaps you, you will die, and you're a mother, you need to protect your kids, that's a good thing to do. Turn the other cheek. That passivity will allow your kids to have a mother. And if Jesus meant turning the other cheek, that Romans are far too powerful, you got sick father to take care of, an elderly mother to take care of, you got kids, you got a wife, you got a husband, you got all these people to take care of. You can't fight the Romans, they're far too powerful. Just give up. That's a good philosophy of life. Okay. Since aggression happens to be part of who and what we are, and remember how aggression comes about. Aggression comes about because you enter different stages in life. You enter a class, a philosophy class. Now, you happen to be a math whiz. Okay? Philosophy demands you to play with a different part of your brain. Become intimate with emotions that you never have been intimate with. Okay? And you realize every time you wrestle with something new, well, you need tools. You don't have the tools. So what happens? Frustration comes about, and it's organic. I mean, first it's a little like irritation. You try to fix it, you can't because you're not versed yet, just yet. So now frustration comes about. Okay. Then after trying and getting frustrated, then confusion comes about. Okay. Then you become angry. Then you punish yourself for being angry. Because for most of your life you say, I'm so good at math. When I do math, it never angers me. I actually quite enjoy it. And because you don't really understand your emotions, and because you don't really understand that philosophy requires a different part of you to become active, now you begin to self-hate without really understanding why you're in this particular position. Okay? And then your sister comes in and says, Carmen, how you doing? And you scream at her. Now you're enraged. Okay. The only way you can really overcome this thing called aggression and anger. Now remember, when it gets to aggression and anger, it has a history behind it. You don't usually start with anger. It starts with an irritation, agitation, then frustration, and then confusion. And if you happen to be of some temperament, you may even get depressed a little bit. Then you try to overcome it, you can't. Then you become angry. Now this anger, for the most part, lives inside you. At a certain point, anger, if you're not careful, takes an outward expression. You break a plate. You punch the wall. You punch another human being. You go somewhere and you scream. Okay. Or you happen to be more creative, like Edward Munch, you paint the screen. Or Duchamp, you put a urinal in a museum. Or Picasso, you do Guernica. You know, or all the people who wrote the 4 Gospels, you write literature. I mean, why do we have Harry Potter movies? Because everyday real life sucks. We need magic. Relationships after a while lose their magic. Ideas lose their magic. We need something that we can't touch. We're all looking for heroes. Now, so again, the point is, in life, you will be angry. You have no choice. You're only 19. When you're 28, you will get married. And it'll be your first relationship. And it'll be new. It'll frustrate the hell out of you. You will have children. Now, you may not want children, but at a certain point your body will scream, and that creates its own set of confusions. Once you have children, you'll imagine you'll be the best mom. But man, with kids, what do you have is frustration. Now, you've never thought yourself to be like a social and political activist, or even interested in social things. But all of a sudden, you look at the public schools, you look at private schools. These are things that came out of your children. Now you take society seriously. Now you begin to hate society, only to realize you have no power over society. Now you look at your husband, private school, or you realize all of a sudden, yes, you love him, but when it comes to finances, he's a loser of a man. Say, I don't give a shit if you're never home. I just need you to make enough money to send our kids to private school. And that's another sort of frustration. And that's what life is. The only thing that you need to make sure that you have is richness. Be in a position of privilege where you can express your anger creatively. Now, one of the ways that we have tried in the past many thousands of years is through language. We create language for one function, to communicate. That lives inside me can now come up, be expressed through language. And that's how now we break bread, communion. That becomes our church. The way I've been broken, okay, now you can take a bite. That becomes Eucharist. What lives inside me now can live inside you. Now you can understand it. They call it empathy, compassion. Now, if you have paid attention to the way the society, and perhaps every society is going right now, is language is failing. Language is failing because violence is on the rise. Violence is an expression of an emotions being repressed deep down that the civilized world can no longer tame. They are raw, they come up. And now you have shootings everywhere. Now, if someone says, well, let's fix society, good luck. Because I'm not really quite sure what branch you want to tackle. Because the truth is, all the branches are intertwined and interconnected. So, the only thing you should take from this class today is, Carmen, the only reason why you're not angry right now is because you're only frustrated. And the only reason why you're not angry is because you have power over that frustration. I know we have only 2 more weeks left to school. You have to juggle a lot of classes, write a lot of essays, do a lot of quizzes, and that's frustrating, tiring. It even makes you angry. But because you are able to manage your time properly, give 2 hours for your math, 5 hours for your chemistry, 10 minutes for your philosophy class, that's the way you have power over your classes, and i.e., power over your emotions. And you say to yourself, I am only going to experience this frustration that's imposed upon me by society and my own greed because I want to go to good schools, okay, for another 2 weeks. Your anger and your frustration, they're not chronic. They live in time. Once the stage passes, you'll find yourself in the promised land. The sort of aggression that you're talking about is someone having tried to repress, to control. They have no longer any power to control. Now it becomes chronic. It doesn't matter where they go. It doesn't matter who they are, what they are. Aggression is who and what they are. They're a ticking bomb. And I don't mean that they need to be like extremely violent. Okay? You can just come to class, raise your hand, and scream your question. Does that? Matt?
I was just kind of wondering, what do you think about the role of desire in nature? So, Buddhism teaches that desire is the root of all suffering, and I feel like with Buddhism, you kind of get kind of get like this will to nothingness. Because I feel like you need desire to drive you to engage with life. And then on the other hand, you can contrast it with Nietzsche, who basically says, instead of trying to get you to turn away from suffering, he
Says yes.
yeah, you transmute that suffering into something beautiful. That's what Nietzsche teaches you to do.
A couple of things. There are, let's just talk about Nietzsche and Buddha. Nietzsche wrote, he lived in books, and Nietzsche lived in his head. He didn't have to sacrifice much. He left his teaching position when he could no longer teach because he was sick. Okay? And he really only had 10 good years of writing. So Nietzsche lived in books. And when your job is to simply to write, you can come up with beautiful ideas. Say yes to life. Overcome yourself. Okay? Buddha's story is very different. Buddha lived life, but he became disenchanted with life. Okay. The story, I think, if I understand Buddhism, this is my own version of the Buddha story. Unlike Nietzsche, the Buddha was not rejected by two women. Unlike Nietzsche, those women were not taken by his best friends. The Buddha was married. Okay. Nietzsche didn't have children, so he could say yes to life. So he didn't understand the frustration. And you could say that Nietzsche understood frustration, fundamentally what the world of frustration is all about. So it doesn't matter if you're married, unmarried, children, no children, none of those things matter. Okay? But that's being too generous towards Nietzsche. The Buddha lost his ability to love life. And I'll tell you why. Next time you go home, okay, and next time you and your companion want to engage in this act of intimacy called sex, okay, make sure there are two parts of you. There's a part that goes to sleep, okay, falls victim or consumed by pleasure, what we call sex, have sex. Have this other part of you, but keep it to yourself. Okay? Keep it private. While you're engaged in this act of sex, be mindful of the way you're behaving, especially if you've had a long-term relationship. That the emotion of love and all the things that love brings about is no longer there. That there's a good part of you that's basically human, all too human, the desire sex. Okay? Second, once you reach your climax and have your orgasm, your desire for sex goes away. Okay? And if you're able to bring about the second part first, sit back and say, okay, I'm going to go home. I'm going to buy, on my way home, buy a book from some flowers, clean the house, cook some food, make a very romantic, peaceful environment. My companion's going to come home. I'm going to create this foreplay, okay? Cooking, talking, and then we're going to go to the bedroom. And then we're going to do A, B, C, D. And then I'm going to reach climax and it's going to be done. Really? I'm going to spend my entire day doing all these things for that last tiny 5 seconds. Is it worth it? And if you embody those truths, you realize, well, you've become a Buddhist. Where exactly in life can you go to enjoy pleasure? Any kind of pleasure. And then you may come to the conclusion that Hermann Hesse came to in his book Siddhartha. where Siddhartha looks at all the people and he says, it's really too bad that someone can simply hug their kid and enjoy that. Someone can simply be married and enjoy that. It's the act of reflection that destroys things. Because what you do is you see something, and then you can transport it to the future, and you can see its outcome, and all of a sudden you realize it's really not that interesting. Imagine you're single, Matt, and imagine I'm single. And imagine you're interested in me and I'm interested in you. I'm 62. You're 30. This is not your first relationship, and neither is it mine. How does it work? Let me tell it to you. I go to Pete and there you are. Our eyes meet. You've been here before. And all of a sudden you find attraction. But what do? Well, you keep thinking about me. And I keep thinking about you. But I'm shy. I'm reserved. You're not as shy. You're not as reserved. Right? So you grab your coffee and you walk towards me. You've been here before. Right? And then you sit. Of course, being the mature man that you are, you say, can I sit here? They say yes. Say, oh, that's an interesting book. You're really not interested in the book I'm reading. What you want to do is you want to start a conversation, and you have. And then you try to put your best foot forward, right? Give me the best image of who Matt is. And now you and I sit, and we talk. Thus spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. And I'm mesmerized, and you're mesmerized. You've been here before. And what does attraction create? Fantasies. You're no longer alone, neither am I. You're inspired, and so am I. For the first time in many months, now conversation is meaningful. It's exciting. Now you've grown wings, and you're about to leave. You're sad, but you've been here before. But what do? You ask for my number. I give it to you willingly. And you give me yours. An hour later, you text me. You know, I'm having some food, chicken tikka masala. If you have nothing to do, come over. And I do, but you've been here before. After a while, what's going to happen? Well, the intellectual desire, the emotional desire, is eventually going to turn into physical desire. You and I will have sex, but you've been here before. And how long can these fantasies sustain us? Month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months?